People love loud voices. They chase headlines, arguments, outrage, drama. They click what shocks them, what flatters them, what confirms what they already believe. Quiet warnings rarely survive in that noise. They sound too simple, too calm, too honest. And that is why most people will ignore this one. Imagine a woman who has seen the world before it applauded her son. A woman who raised children when there was no guarantee of success, no promise of wealth, no certainty of safety. A woman who understands pressure, risk, loneliness, and the price of vision long before the world calls it genius. When such a woman speaks, she doesn't shout. She warns, not with fear, but with clarity. Her warning is not about technology or money or fame. It's about the human cost of living distracted, entitled, and asleep. She would say this: most people fail not because they are unlucky, but because they refuse to prepare for discomfort. They want progress without pressure, growth without pain, results without responsibility. And life doesn't work that way. She has watched people mock ambition until it succeeds. She has seen critics laugh until they copy. She has seen comfort turn strong people weak and struggle turn ordinary people unstoppable. And the pattern never changes. Her warning is simple: if you are always waiting for perfect conditions, you are already behind. Most people wait. They wait to feel ready. They wait for confidence. They wait for approval. They wait for someone to notice them, guide them, rescue them, motivate them. Waiting feels safe. Waiting feels responsible. Waiting feels smart, but waiting is often just fear wearing polite clothes. She would tell you that resilience is not inherited. It is trained. It is built in moments when no one is watching and no one is praising you. It is built when things are boring, repetitive, lonely, and hard. The world celebrates outcomes, but outcomes are the smallest part of the story. She has lived long enough to know that talent without endurance is useless. Intelligence without discipline is wasted. Passion without structure burns out. Dreams without daily effort become regrets. Her warning is this: if you are addicted to comfort, the future will feel cruel to you. The world ahead is not designed to slow down for anyone. Technology will not wait for you to catch up emotionally. Competition will not care about your excuses. Change will not ask for your permission. And the more fragile you are inside, the more hostile the world will feel. She would say that people misunderstand confidence. They think confidence comes first, then action. In reality, action comes first, and confidence is a side effect. You don't become brave and then move. You move while afraid, and bravery grows quietly behind you. She would warn you about applause. Applause is addictive. It trains you to perform instead of improve. It teaches you to chase attention instead of mastery. And attention is the cheapest currency in the world. Anyone can get it. Very few deserve it. She has seen how praise can destroy learning. How early success can make people arrogant. How comfort can steal hunger. She knows that the most dangerous moment in a person's life is when they start believing they have arrived. Her warning is not gentle. No one is coming to save you, not your family. Not your friends. Not society. Not the government. Not luck. Support may appear, guidance may come, opportunities may open, but responsibility will always be yours. She would tell you that suffering is not a sign that you are failing. Often, it is a sign that you are growing. People who avoid all suffering also avoid all transformation. They stay familiar, predictable, and small. She would tell you to be careful what you consume. Not just food, but ideas. Opinions. Content. Conversations. The mind becomes what it repeatedly feeds on. If you surround yourself with cynicism, you will become cynical. If you drown in distraction, you will lose depth. If you listen to people who have never built anything, you will inherit their fear of building. Her warning would cut deeper here. Stop taking advice from people who are comfortable being average. Average is safe. Average is popular. Average is crowded. And average is where dreams quietly suffocate. She would remind you that extraordinary results require ordinary actions repeated for an extraordinary amount of time. There is nothing glamorous about consistency. It is boring. It is invisible. It is lonely. That's why it works. Most people quit when progress becomes invisible. They confuse silence with failure. They mistake slow growth for no growth. And because of that, they never stay long enough to see what could have happened. She has watched years compress into moments for those who persist. She has seen patience look like stupidity right before it looks like genius. Her warning is this: don't underestimate time. Time rewards what you repeat. She would talk about responsibility in a way that makes people uncomfortable. Not blame. Responsibility. Blame looks backward. Responsibility looks forward. Responsibility says, even if this isn't my fault, it is my problem to solve. That mindset changes everything. She would warn you that bitterness is seductive. It feels intelligent. It feels justified. It feels powerful. But bitterness is lazy. It lets you feel superior without improving anything. And it slowly poisons the person who holds it. She would say, build skills, not fantasies. Build routines, not excuses. Build patience, not entitlement. She would remind you that the world doesn't owe you understanding. It owes you nothing. And that is not cruel, it is freeing. Because when you stop expecting fairness, you start focusing on capability. She has seen how fragile people break under pressure and then call pressure the problem. She has seen how strong people adapt and then call pressure the teacher. Her warning would linger here: life will test you more than it explains itself. you won't always know why something failed. You won't always get closure. You won't always be understood. And if you need constant validation to move forward, you will stop often. She would tell you to learn to work without mood. Mood is unreliable. Discipline is loyal. Motivation is emotional. Systems are structural. Build systems. She would say that most people want the rewards of discipline without the boredom of it. They want the body without the training. The respect without the integrity. The success without the sacrifice. Her warning is clear. Shortcuts have long-term costs. She would talk about loneliness, because she understands it deeply. The loneliness of standing by decisions others don't understand. The loneliness of holding standards others mock. The loneliness of believing early. She would tell you that loneliness is often the price of being ahead of your time. And that not all loneliness is bad. Some loneliness is protective. It keeps you away from noise while you build. She would warn you not to confuse isolation with focus, though. Focus is intentional. Isolation can be avoidance. Know the difference. She would remind you that humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking less about yourself. It is staying teachable even when you succeed. It is knowing that there is always more to learn. Her warning would end where it began, quietly. Pay attention. Pay attention to how you spend your days. Pay attention to what drains you. Pay attention to what strengthens you. Pay attention to the habits you normalize and the standards you tolerate, because your life will not be shaped by one dramatic decision. It will be shaped by thousands of small ones you barely notice. Most people will ignore this warning because it doesn't entertain them. It doesn't flatter them. It doesn't give them someone else to blame. It asks too much, but for the few who listen, it doesn't promise comfort. It promises capability. It doesn't offer certainty. It offers resilience. And in an uncertain world, resilience is everything. The warning is not meant to scare you. It is meant to wake you up. And waking up is always uncomfortable. At first, she would continue by saying that the greatest misunderstanding people carry is the belief that life is supposed to feel easy once you figure it out. There is no final chapter where effort disappears. There is no permanent state of comfort you earn and then rest inside forever. Every level brings a new weight, a new responsibility. A new demand on your character. The people who suffer most are the ones who expect difficulty to end. She has seen how people romanticize success from the outside. They imagine freedom without pressure, money without stress, recognition without scrutiny. They don't see the constant decisions, the sleepless nights, the responsibility of consequences when things go wrong. They don't see how success amplifies everything you already are. If you are disciplined, it demands more discipline. If you are careless, it exposes you faster. Her warning here would be quiet but sharp. Do not chase outcomes you are not prepared to maintain. Most people want the reward, not the responsibility that comes with it. They want visibility, not accountability. They want influence, not the burden of being watched. And when they finally get a taste of what they asked for, they realize they never trained for the weight of it. She would tell you that character matters more under success than under struggle. Struggle humbles you by force. Success tests whether you stay grounded by choice. She would talk about patience again, but differently this time. Not passive patience, but active patience. The kind that keeps working even when results are delayed. The kind that understands that progress is often happening underground long before it shows above the surface. She would warn you that impatience ruins more futures than failure ever does. Failure teaches. Impatience sabotages. People rush decisions because they feel behind. They compare timelines. They panic when they see someone else winning. They abandon foundations for speed. And speed without stability always crashes. She would say, your pace does not need to match anyone else's. Your direction does. She would remind you that comparison is a thief. Not just of joy, but of focus. The moment you measure your life against someone else's highlight reel, you stop seeing your own progress clearly. You start making decisions that aren't aligned with who you are, only with who you envy. Her warning would cut deeper here. Envy feels passive, but it quietly controls you. She would tell you that attention is one of the most valuable assets you have, and most people give it away for free. To drama. To outrage. To endless scrolling. To opinions that don't improve their lives in any meaningful way, she would say, guard your attention like your future depends on it, because it does. Whatever holds your attention shapes your thinking. Whatever shapes your thinking shapes your actions. And your actions, repeated, shape your life. She would warn you that constant stimulation weakens resilience. When you are used to instant entertainment, silence feels unbearable. When you are used to instant feedback, slow progress feels like failure. When you are used to instant gratification, long-term goals feel impossible. She has seen how people lose the ability to sit with discomfort, and with it, the ability to grow. Her message here would be uncomfortable. Boredom is not your enemy. It is often the doorway to mastery. She would remind you that the world rewards people who can focus deeply on one thing for a long time. And that ability is becoming rare. Which makes it valuable. She would tell you that you don't need more motivation. You need fewer distractions. You don't need more confidence. You need more evidence, built through action. She would warn you against the illusion of planning. Planning feels productive. Learning feels productive. Talking feels productive. But none of them replace doing. Many people hide behind preparation because action risks exposure. She would say, imperfect action teaches faster than perfect planning ever will. She would talk about failure again, but without drama. Failure is not an identity. It is feedback. The only failure that matters is refusing to adjust. She would remind you that resilience is built by recovering. not by avoiding setbacks. The people who grow strongest are not those who never fall, but those who learn how to get up without losing their direction. Her warning would include this truth: setbacks do not erase progress unless you let them redefine you. She would tell you that emotional control is a superpower. Not suppression, but regulation. The ability to feel deeply without being ruled by feelings. The ability to stay steady when emotions are loud. Most people are controlled by how they feel in the moment. They act when inspired, stop when discouraged, quit when bored. She would say that mastery begins when feelings stop being the boss. She would warn you that the world will constantly try to provoke you, to distract you, to pull you into arguments that don't build anything, to make you react instead of respond. Reaction feels powerful. Response is powerful. She would tell you to choose long-term respect over short-term validation, to choose self-respect over applause, to choose progress over popularity. She would remind you that many people will misunderstand your discipline as arrogance, your boundaries as coldness, your silence as weakness. Let them. You are not here to be interpreted correctly by everyone. You are here to live correctly by your own standards. Her warning would soften here, but not weaken. Be kind, but not soft on yourself. Compassion without standards becomes indulgence. Standards without compassion become cruelty. Balance matters. She would say that the strongest people are not those who never struggle, but those who don't let struggle make them small. She would warn you about stories you tell yourself. The ones about being unlucky, being late, being different, being behind. Stories can either explain your life or imprison it. She would say, choose stories that move you forward. She would remind you that you don't need permission to take your own life seriously. Many people wait for validation that never comes. They underestimate how much authority they already have over their own choices. Her warning would end this part with something simple. Almost too simple to feel profound. Keep going, not dramatically. Not desperately. Just consistently, because most people don't fail from one big mistake. They fail from stopping too soon, and the warning remains the same, quietly echoing beneath everything else. Pay attention to what you're becoming while you chase what you want. She would go on to say that identity is one of the most underestimated forces in a person's life. Not what you say you want, but who you believe you are allowed to become. Many people sabotage themselves not through lack of effort, but through loyalty to an old version of themselves that no longer fits. They keep repeating patterns because they feel familiar. They stay small because growth would require redefining who they are around others. And change threatens belonging. Staying the same feels safer than risking misunderstanding. Her warning here would be subtle but piercing. Comfort with your past can become resistance to your future. She would say that reinvention is not betrayal. It is survival. You are not required to stay consistent with a version of yourself that was built for a different season. Growth will always ask you to disappoint some expectations, especially the ones people formed when you were easier to predict. she has seen people shrink themselves to stay accepted. She has seen them mute their ambition, soften their discipline, lower their standards just to remain familiar. And she has seen the quiet regret that follows. Her warning would be this: never negotiate your potential to protect someone else's comfort. She would talk about fear again, but not as an enemy. Fear is information. It tells you where growth lies. The problem is not fear. The problem is obedience to it. She would say that courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear make decisions for you. Most people let fear vote. Some even let it rule. She would remind you that the mind is very good at protecting you, but not very good at improving you. It will always choose the known over the possible unless you consciously override it. Her warning would deepen here: growth requires you to override instincts that once kept you safe. She would talk about discipline in an unromantic way. Discipline is not intensity. It is reliability. It is showing up on days you don't feel inspired. It is choosing what matters over what feels good in the moment. She would say that discipline is self-respect in action. Most people confuse discipline with punishment. They think it means being harsh, rigid, joyless. But true discipline is clarity. It removes negotiation from moments of weakness. It protects your future self from your present impulses. She would warn you that without discipline, motivation becomes a trap. Motivation rises and falls. Discipline stays. She would speak about money carefully, not as an obsession, but as a tool. Money amplifies values. It doesn't create them. If you are reckless, it accelerates recklessness. If you are intentional, it expands options. Her warning would be simple: learn how money works before you criticize it or worship it. She has seen people resent what they never learned to manage. She has seen people chase wealth without understanding responsibility. Both paths end in frustration. She would tell you to invest early, not just financially, but in skills, health, relationships, and mindset. Compounding is not just for money. Small habits, repeated over time, quietly shape outcomes that look dramatic from the outside. She would warn you not to underestimate the cost of neglect. Neglect is silent. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't hurt immediately. But it accumulates interest. She would say, what you ignore today will demand attention tomorrow. She would talk about health in a grounded way. Not perfection. Maintenance. Energy is the foundation of everything. Without it, ambition collapses. Dreams require stamina. She has seen brilliant people fail simply because they didn't take care of the body that carried their mind. She would remind you that strength is not vanity. It is insurance. Her warning would be clear: protect your energy before you protect your image. She would speak about relationships with honesty. Not everyone grows with you. Not everyone wants to. Some people prefer who you were because it made them comfortable. She would say that loyalty to growth sometimes requires distance. Not hatred. not drama. Just space. Her warning would be gentle but firm. Not every bond is meant to last forever. She would tell you that boundaries are not walls. They are filters. They allow what aligns to stay and what drains to pass by. She would remind you that saying no is a skill. A necessary one. Every yes costs something. Choose carefully what you pay with your time and energy. She would warn you about noise disguised as opportunity. Not every invitation is aligned. Not every chance is meant for you. Some distractions wear attractive clothes. She would say, learn to recognize what looks good versus what is good for you. She would talk about legacy, but not in a dramatic sense. Legacy is built in ordinary moments. In how you treat people when no one is watching. In how you handle power, pressure, and privilege. She would warn you that reputation is fragile, but character is durable. Reputation depends on perception. Character depends on choice. She would remind you that the fastest way to lose credibility is to compromise small values for short-term gain. Integrity rarely collapses all at once. It erodes quietly. Her warning would return again to awareness. Watch the small compromises. They are rarely small in the long run. She would end this part with a truth many avoid: life is neutral. It doesn't favor you or oppose you. It responds to consistency, to effort, to honesty, to preparation, to patience, and most people will ignore these warnings because they require internal change before external results. Because they ask for responsibility before reward. Because they don't offer a villain to blame or a shortcut to take. But those who listen won't feel superior. They'll feel grounded, and grounded people are hard to shake. She would finish by saying that awareness is the final responsibility. Once you see clearly, you can no longer pretend you didn't know. Ignorance can be accidental. Awareness is a choice. And many people avoid it because it removes excuses. She would say that life keeps teaching the same lessons until they are learned. Patterns repeat not because fate is cruel, but because attention is absent. The same mistakes wear different faces. The same warnings arrive in different voices. And until you listen, nothing truly changes. Her warning here would be calm, almost tender: stop asking why this keeps happening. And start asking what this is trying to teach you. She would remind you that wisdom is not collected from quotes or books alone. It is earned through reflection. Through noticing your reactions. Through recognizing when your ego speaks louder than your values. She would tell you that self-honesty is rare because it is uncomfortable. It forces you to admit where you are inconsistent, where you procrastinate, where you settle. But without self-honesty, improvement becomes performance instead of progress. She would say, don't lie to yourself to protect your pride. Pride heals slower than truth. She would talk about forgiveness, not as weakness, but as release. Holding resentment feels like strength. But it ties you to the past. Forgiveness doesn't excuse behavior. It frees your energy. Her warning would be quiet but firm. Unresolved anger leaks into every part of your life. She would remind you that peace is not found by controlling the world, but by mastering your response to it. You cannot manage every outcome, but you can manage your effort, your attitude, your integrity. She would say that control is overrated. Influence is earned. And influence starts with how you show up when things don't go your way. She would speak about faith, not necessarily religious, but inner trust. Trust that effort matters even when results are delayed. Trust that staying aligned will matter in the long run. Trust that not everything needs to make sense immediately. She would warn you that cynicism feels smart but builds nothing. Hope, when paired with action, builds everything. She would remind you that life is shorter than it feels in moments of distraction and longer than it feels in moments of pain. Both truths coexist. Don't waste the shortness. Don't panic in the length. She would say that courage sometimes looks like persistence, sometimes like letting go, and sometimes like starting over without bitterness. Her warning would return one last time to responsibility. No one else will live with the consequences of your choices as closely as you will. She would tell you that you don't need to be extraordinary to live a meaningful life. You need to be intentional. Intentional with your time. Intentional with your effort. Intentional with who you become. She would say that meaning is built, not discovered. It grows from contribution, not consumption. From creating more than you criticize. From giving more than you demand. Her final warning would not sound like a threat. It would sound like an invitation: pay attention now, or life will force your attention later. Choose discipline before desperation. Awareness before regret. Growth before comfort. Most people will ignore this because it asks them to change quietly, without applause. Because it asks them to become responsible before becoming successful. Because it removes the illusion that someone else is steering the ship. But for the few who listen, this warning becomes a compass, not pointing to ease, but to direction, not promising certainty, but strength, not offering escape, but ownership, and ownership, once accepted, changes everything.